Hidden in the Nevada desert, Area 51 has tested aircraft faster than sound, drones that vanish from radar, and technologies the world may never see, but its secrets come with controversy, mystery, and a trail of questions that still haunt us today. Before continuing the video, it would be good to introduce yourselves first and where you are from, so that the admin will be more enthusiastic about creating the content. For decades, Area 51 has stood as one of the most enigmatic and myth-laden locations in the United States, a place where secrecy is not merely a protocol but the very essence of its existence. To the public, the name conjures images of impenetrable fences, desert horizons, and aircraft that seem to come from eras yet to arrive. It is a symbol of Cold War paranoia, cutting-edge experimentation, and the realm where national security intersects with folklore. Yet behind the pop culture narratives and sensationalized conspiracies lies a far more grounded, far more controlled reality. A remote United States Air Force facility designed for experiments, so sensitive that they have been shielded from public awareness for generations. Area 51 is often described as the most secretive place in America, a phrase repeated so often it risks losing meaning. But secrecy is not a mere reputation, here it is institutionalized. Everything from flight schedules to personnel movements is tightly restricted. Even the simple acknowledgement of the base's existence was withheld for more than half a century, long before the CIA formally confirmed the installation in 2013. Only rumors, satellite images, and secondhand reports hinted at what was happening within its borders. This combination of silence and speculation gave rise to an aura unlike any other military site in the world. It is a place deliberately hidden, visible on maps only metaphorically, and officially recognized only when necessity forced transparency. Calling Area 51 a forgotten facility might seem contradictory at first, given its regular appearance in movies, documentaries, and conspiracy forums. But the term forgotten here does not signify abandonment or neglect. Rather, it reflects a purposeful erasure from public narratives. For much of its existence, Area 51 simply did not appear within official discourse, neither in military briefings nor federal documents. It was absent, omitted, or referred to only through coded language. The base was not forgotten by those who worked there or by those in power. It was forgotten for the public, cordoned away from national memory, as if it existed in a parallel domain of classified history. It became a shadow in American consciousness, known, yet unknown, talked about, yet legally non-existent. The choice to bury the facility beneath layers of classification was not arbitrary. From its earliest years, Area 51 was the cradle of technological breakthroughs that demanded extreme levels of operational secrecy. The Cold War era, especially the 1950s and 1960s, was marked by a frenzy of surveillance innovation age development, a potential tipping point in the struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. In this atmosphere, the United States Air Force and the CIA sought a location remote enough to conduct test flights of the U-2 spy plane, yet accessible enough for secure logistical operations. They chose a swath of barren Nevada desert, a salt flat known as Groom Lake, surrounded by natural barriers and far from civilian eyes, situated within the sprawling Nevada Test and Training Range. The site lies roughly 83 miles, 134 kilometers northwest of Las Vegas. Its remoteness is palpable. Most of the landscape surrounding it consists of rugged mountain ridges, vast desert plains, and restricted airspace that blankets the entire region. Access is rigidly controlled. Unauthorized entry is impossible without triggering an immediate security response. Even the heavily monitored roads leading toward the perimeter serve as deterrents, simple asphalt paths that disappear into vast nothingness, yet are watched from multiple angles. There are no welcome signs, no public tour routes, and no chance encounters. The base exists inside a controlled void, where every approach is observed and every movement documented. Despite such invisibility, the facility's existence was an open secret to many amateur aviation watchers, satellite imagery analysts, and curious travelers passing through. Nevada's sparse highways often pointed to unusual aircraft shapes or glowing nighttime flights over the desert. The nearby town of Rachel, tiny, isolated, and quirky, capitalized on the mystique, branding its road as the extraterrestrial highway, attracting tourists hopeful for a glimpse of the unexplained. Yet official silence persisted. Government spokespeople refrained from acknowledging even the name Area 51, let alone any details regarding the exotic technology tested there. This silence endured until 2013, when the CIA finally released declassified documents in response to a long-standing Freedom of Information Act request. The admission was subtle and carefully phrased, but historically significant. It confirmed, for the first time, that Area 51 was real and had been used extensively for the U-2 program and subsequent classified aviation projects. The files included maps, photographs, and memos that outlined decades of developmental works, shattering the illusion that the government could indefinitely maintain a veil of non-existence. While the disclosure did not reveal everything, much remained, and still remains. Under lock and key marked the moment when myth and documented reality briefly intersected. Yet even with confirmation, the mystery has not dissipated. If anything, the revelation strengthened the narrative. If the US government kept the entire site unacknowledged for nearly 60 years, what still lies buried behind those layers of secrecy today? What aircraft have flown under the cover of night, leaving no trace beyond classified reports? What innovation, some successful, others catastrophic, were tested on the salt flats of Groom Lake? Area 51, then, is not merely a secret base. It is a symbol of how power and information can be shaped, withheld, and revealed only when deemed strategically necessary. It represents the tension between national security and public transparency, a tension that continues to define the modern era of military technology. And though the facility is anything but abandoned, it remains forgotten in the sense that it has been carefully excluded from the narrative of American technological progress. Its stories are scattered, redacted, and often overshadowed by speculation. To approach Area 51 is to approach the edge of the known world, not geographically, but conceptually. Here, history dissolves into classified shadows, and the line between what is real and what is rumored remains deliberately blurred. The gateway to this forbidden zone is not a gate at all, but a historical silence that has lasted generations. The vast deserts of southern Nevada stretch endlessly toward the horizon, forming a landscape that is as unforgiving as it is mesmerizing. Among these expanses lies Groom Lake, an ancient dry lakebed that has become synonymous with Area 51's secretive operations. At first glance, Groom Lake appears deceptively simpler, broad sweep of hard-packed white salt, almost perfectly level, shimmering under the relentless desert sun. Yet it is this very simplicity that made the site invaluable, transforming a barren stretch of land into one of the most consequential testing grounds in modern military history. The lakebed's natural flatness offers a runway miles long, capable of supporting high-speed takeoffs and landings. Long before any concrete airstrips were laid, the salt flat itself served as a natural landing surface, ideal for experimental aircraft that required vast room for error. Groom Lake measures approximately 3 by 5 miles, though its exact dimensions shift subtly with the seasons, depending on the rare but occasionally heavy desert rains. When dry, and it is dry nearly year-round, the surface hardens into a natural asphalt, smooth enough to leave minimal dust trails. Pilots flying prototypes in the 1950s and 1960s trusted this surface as a safety net. If an experimental jet malfunctioned or overshot a runway, they could glide onto the lakebed with reduced risk of catastrophic damage. To the military engineers scouting for secrecy and safety, Groom Lake was a dream, a geographical anomaly that offered both isolation and functionality. Isolation, indeed, is the dominant feature of this desert realm. Area 51 lies nestled within a basin shielded on all sides by jagged mountain ranges, natural walls that block sightlines and serve as protective barriers against prying eyes. The Papoose Range to the southwest, the Groom Range to the east, and scattered ridges to the north create a fortress of rock and sand. These mountains are more than scenic backdrops. They are part of the facility's security envelope. Anyone approaching from ground level must first traverse miles of inhospitable terrain, while anyone attempting aerial surveillance must contend with restricted airspace that blankets the entire region. Even aside from the topographical barriers, the desert environment itself plays a critical role in the secrecy of Area 51. The climate is strenuous, and stark daytime temperatures regularly soar past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius in summer. While winter nights can plunge below freezing, rainfall is rare, sometimes non-existent for months at a time. The air is exceptionally dry, reducing humidity-related atmospheric disturbances and creating ideal conditions for high-altitude flight testing. Visibility can stretch for dozens of miles on clear days, though dust storms occasionally sweep through the flats, adding a layer of natural camouflage. These harsh environmental conditions discourage casual exploration. There are no natural water sources, no shade, no towns for miles in any direction, only endless desert stretching toward distant mountain silhouettes. The remoteness is so profound that even adventurous travelers feel the weight of isolation long before coming anywhere near the restricted perimeter. The nearest major city, Las Vegas, lies roughly 83 miles, 134 kilometers to the southeast. And even that bustling oasis feels worlds away from the austere silence of the Nevada Test and Training Range. Yet, amid this vast emptiness, life does exist, small, resilient, and shaped by the mystique of the region. The tiny community of Rachel, Nevada, is the closest inhabited settlement to Area 51, with a population that rarely exceeds 100 residents. Rachel embodies the frontier spirit of the American West, though its identity has been heavily influenced by the shadows cast by its secretive neighbor. What began as a modest mining and ranching outpost slowly transformed into a quirky tourist hub as curiosity about Area 51 grew. Visitors from around the world traveled to Rachel to catch even a symbolic glimpse of the unknown. Motels and diners in the town embraced the extraterrestrial theme, with menus, decor, and merchandise drawing directly from decades of UFO folklore. The highway connecting Rachel to the rest of Nevada was formally renamed the Extraterrestrial Highway in 1996, a nod to the countless sightings, rumors, and tales of strange lights in the sky. While many of these stories stem from classified test flights of cutting-edge aircraft, the mythos has become inseparable from reality. Travelers pose for photos beside the iconic highway sign, unaware that advanced aircraft likely passed overhead decades before the public knew of their existence. At night, the desert becomes an ocean of darkness, punctuated only by starlight and the occasional glow of headlights. For many visitors, this haunting tranquility fuels the imagination, transforming the drive into something deeper, pilgrimage to the edge of a world kept deliberately hidden. Beyond Rachel, the landscape becomes even more desolate. The roads grow sparse, winding through open desert plains with no cell service, no fuel stations, and no signs of civilization. It is here that the scale of Nevada's restricted zones becomes truly apparent. The Nevada Test and Training Range encompasses millions of acres, one of the largest restricted military zones in the world. Within its borders lie nuclear test sites, bombing ranges, radar installations, and, of course, the heavily protected enclave known as Area 51. Roads leading toward the base are patrolled by unmarked security vehicles, and warning signs make it abundantly clear trespassers will face severe consequences. Even stopping for too long near the boundary can trigger attention from sensors and cameras hidden across the terrain. In many ways, the geography surrounding Area 51 is as much a part of its security system as any fence, camera, or guard. The emptiness keeps secrets safe. The harshness keeps intruders out. The mountains hide metallic shapes streaking across the sky at impossible speeds. And Groom Lake, shimmering like a ghostly silver mirror under the desert sun, forms the heart of it, all silent still, and perfectly suited for the extraordinary things that take place upon its surface. Thus, the desert does not merely surround Area 51, it protects it, it conceals it, it defines it, and perhaps most importantly, it ensures that whatever happens within its boundaries remains hidden from the world beyond those lonely Nevada horizons. The origins of Area 51 can be traced to a pivotal moment in American history, a moment when the pressures of global conflict demanded unprecedented secrecy, innovation, and audacity. It was 1955, at the height of the Cold War, when the United States found itself locked in a high-stakes intelligence race against the Soviet Union. The geopolitical landscape was volatile. The threat of nuclear escalation, ever present, and the need for reliable surveillance had become a matter of survival. In this climate of uncertainty, a decision was made that would reshape the future of aviation and forever mark a patch of desert in Nevada as one of the most secretive places on Earth. The story began when the United States Air Force USAF and the Central Intelligence Agency CIA joined forces to develop an aircraft capable of flying higher and farther than any in existence. Satellites were still a distant dream, and traditional reconnaissance flights risked detection, interception, or political disaster. What the United States needed was a platform that could soar above the reach of Soviet air defenses and gather critical intelligence without provoking open conflict. This ambition gave birth to what would become the U-2 program, one of the most daring and consequential aviation projects of the 20th century. The CIA, under the leadership of Director Allen Dulles and key figure Richard Bissell, approached Lockheed's legendary engineer, Clarence Kelly Johnson, founder of the Skunk Works division known for producing aircraft that bordered on the impossible. Johnson accepted the challenge, but he emphasized that such an aircraft could not be developed or tested in any conventional location. The work required isolation, security, and complete concealment from both foreign powers and the American public. Thus began the search for a remote testing ground. Aerial surveys identified a promising location, a dry lakebed in southern Nevada known as Groom Lake. The area had been used during World War II as an auxiliary airstrip, but after the war, it had fallen into disuse. Its isolation was ideal. The surrounding mountains provided natural cover. The lakebed itself was expansive and perfectly flat. And most importantly, it lay within the boundaries of the Nevada Test and Training Range, already home to classified nuclear testing operations. With a combination of legal maneuvering and classified directives, the USAF and CIA acquired the land in 1955, essentially erasing the area from public maps. What had once been an empty patch of desert would soon become one of the most important secret installations in the tiny United States. Construction moved quickly. Temporary shelters, trailers, and basic runways sprang up around the lakebed, forming the early skeleton of what would become Area 51. The project was codenamed Site 2. though it would soon acquire the moniker that would endure for decades. Workers and pilots referred to it informally as Paradise Ranch. In a tongue-in-cheek effort to make the desolate facility sound more appealing, the name did little to soften the harsh realities of the environment. But it did mark the beginning of a unique culture, one built on secrecy, sacrifice, and innovation. Secrecy, sacrifice, and innovation. The U-2, meanwhile, was taking shape under the relentless pace set by Johnson and his skunkworks team. Designed to fly at altitudes above 70,000 feet, the aircraft pushed beyond the capabilities of contemporary aviation. Its long, slender wings allowed it to glide gracefully through the stratosphere, where the air was thin and radar detection was limited. Its lightweight frame, however, also made it notoriously difficult to fly, especially during takeoffs and landings. Test pilots faced enormous risks, and it quickly became clear that they needed a secluded environment where crashes, failures, or unusual flight patterns would not attract unwanted attention. Groom Lake was the perfect solution. By mid-1955, the first U-2 prototypes arrived at the fledgling base. Pilots trained rigorously, learning to navigate the aircraft's quirks and pushing the boundaries of human endurance at extreme altitudes. Each flight was a step into the unknown, a combination of scientific experiment and geopolitical necessity. The intelligence gathered during the early U-2 missions would become invaluable, giving the United States unprecedented insight into Soviet missile capabilities, nuclear development, and military installations. But behind every successful mission was the hidden world of Area 51 NIT's runways, engineers, technicians, and pilots all operating under strict secrecy. Word of the unusual aircraft sightings did reach the public. However, civilians occasionally spotted strange shapes glinting high above the desert, and commercial pilots reported metallic forms flying far above standard altitude limits. These sightings, occurring long before the government would admit to the existence of the U-2 program or Area 51 itself, inadvertently sparked many early UFO reports. What people saw were not extraterrestrial visitors, but classified American aircraft, the unintended consequence of conducting experimental flights in the open sky. As the Cold War intensified, so too did the activities at Area 51. The U-2 program's success solidified the base's importance and ensured continued investment. As newer, faster, and more technologically advanced aircraft were conceived, many within the same skunkworks environment, the base expanded to accommodate them. Additional facilities were built, runways were extended, and security became increasingly sophisticated. Helicopters patrolled the perimeter, sensors monitored remote desert roads, and the entire region was enveloped in restricted airspace. Groom Lake was no longer just a testing site. It had become the epicenter of America's covert aviation research. The birth of Area 51 was not merely the establishment of a military facility, it was the creation of a new frontier in clandestine engineering. The U-2 served as its catalyst, proving that secrecy and innovation could coexist on an extraordinary scale. What began as a single project to outmaneuver Soviet radar systems evolved into a permanent institution dedicated to pushing the limits of what aircraft could do and where they could go. In many ways, the desolate Nevada desert was not chosen by chance, it was chosen because the future of American intelligence depended on it. And within this isolated expanse, Area 51 emerged as the crucible where bold ideas were tested, where risk was embraced, and where the boundaries of the possible were rewritten. In the shadows of Cold War espionage, the boundaries of secrecy often blurred not only the truth but also the language surrounding it. Over time, mistranslations, rumors, and coded references created layers of confusion that made classified projects nearly unrecognizable to the public. One such example is Project Ox, a name sometimes distorted or humorously misinterpreted in Indonesian as Proyek Gerobak Lembu, meaning axe cart. The mistranslation is ironic, almost comical, considering that the program it refers to was anything but slow or primitive. In reality, Project Oxcart oversaw the creation of the fastest operational spy aircraft ever built, the A-12, a sleek titanium dart capable of speeds exceeding Mach 3.2. This was no Oxcart. It was a technological leap decades ahead of its time. The origins of Oxcart began in the late 1950s, when intelligence officials realized that the U-2, despite its achievements, was increasingly vulnerable. The Soviet Union was improving radar systems and air defenses, raising the risk of a shootdown, a risk that became a reality in 1960 when Francis Gary Powers' U-22 was struck by a Soviet missile and captured. The incident magnified the need for a reconnaissance platform that could outrun, outclimb, and outmaneuver any known threat. The solution required a radical new approach, an aircraft that combined speed, altitude, and stealth in ways no existing design could accomplish. Once again, the CIA turned to Lockheed's Skunk Works division, led by the visionary engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson. The team conceived a design so advanced that it bordered on science fiction. The A-12 would be built primarily out of titanium, a material notoriously difficult to manufacture but essential for withstanding the extreme temperatures Generated by Mach 3 flight, its contours were smooth, its surfaces angled to reduce radar reflection, and its engines were among the most powerful ever tested. From the very beginning, Oxcart was designed not just to evade detection, but to outrun any threat that managed to track it. Area 51 became the crucible where this aircraft would be forged. Under the cloak of absolute secrecy, the base expanded rapidly throughout the early 1960s to accommodate the program's needs. New hangars were built, runways lengthened, fuel facilities upgraded, and personnel sworn to unprecedented levels of confidentiality. Everything about the A-12 was classified from its design to its flight, scheduled to the identities of the pilots selected to fly it. Workers had to refer to the aircraft only by its internal designation. Even photographs were forbidden unless authorized, and the aircraft itself was housed in specially constructed hangars. To conceal its angular frame from satellite surveillance, test flights pushed the limits of aeronautical engineering. Pilots reported vibrations at speeds no human had ever experienced, cockpit temperatures that surged despite heavy insulation, and the eerie sensation of flying on the edge of physics. At Mach 3, the aircraft's skin heated to temperatures that could fry an egg. Some parts of the fuselage expanded several inches from heat alone, causing fuel to leak on the ground and only seal properly once airborne. Yet these extreme conditions were necessary to achieve the speed required to outrun surface-to-air missiles. Not every test went smoothly. Several catastrophic incidents occurred, each one buried under layers of classification, its details unknown to the public for decades. One such incident took place in 1963, when an A-12 disintegrated during a high-altitude test flight, killing the pilot. Official reports to the public stated that a conventional military aircraft had crashed during routine training. Families of pilots were often told only fragments of the truth, sometimes accompanied by fabricated cover stories designed to preserve secrecy. The technology being tested was so sensitive that even acknowledging the program's existence was deemed a risk to national security. Perhaps the most defining moment in the program's secrecy came during the transportation of the aircraft. To move the A-12 from its manufacturing site to Area 51, engineers had to dismantle it into enormous pieces and transport it via specially designed trailers. These convoys traveled at night, escorted by armed guards, with local roads temporarily closed. When curious onlookers reported sightings of bizarre metallic shapes wrapped in tarps, military officials issued generic statements about transporting equipment. Rumors flourished, but the truth remained tightly sealed behind classified walls. Despite its cutting-edge design, the A-12 had a relatively short operational lifespan. It flew covert missions over Asia in the mid-1960s under the codename Operation Black Shield. Its speed made it nearly invulnerable. No A-12 was ever shot down, but geopolitical tensions and the rapid development of satellite reconnaissance made its missions increasingly unnecessary. By the late 1960s, the aircraft was retired and replaced by its more famous successor, the SR-71 Blackbird, which was based heavily on the A-12's foundational technology. The legacy of Project Oxcart remained buried for decades, hidden beneath layers of bureaucratic silence. Only in the early 2000s did declassified documents reveal the full extent of the program's ambition, the A-12's existence, and the existence of the astonishing program that birthed it conferred what many had long suspected: the United States had been testing aircraft far more advanced than anything acknowledged publicly. In retrospect, the nickname, Garabak Lembu, seems almost absurd, a lost-in-translation relic that masks the true scale of the technological marvel produced under Project Oxcart. This was no lumbering cart dragged by livestock. It was a titanium predator, engineered to soar at the edge of space and outrun the fastest missiles of its time. The mystery surrounding it, however, remains emblematic of Area 51's broader legacy, a place where impossibilities were pursued, failures were concealed, and triumphs were classified for generations. Project Oxcart is a reminder that history often hides its boldest achievements in the quietest corners of the desert, where secrecy becomes both a necessity and a defining characteristic. And within the remote expanse of Groom Lake, the A-12 took shape not as a myth, but as a masterpiece of innovation, one whose story was locked away for decades, waiting to be uncovered. In the wake of Project Oxcart's extraordinary breakthroughs, the push for faster, higher, and more covert reconnaissance technologies did not slow. Instead, the success of the A-12 inspired a new question within the CIA and Lockheed's Skunk Works division. Could reconnaissance be achieved without risking a pilot's life at all? This question would give rise to one of the most ambitious and enigmatic drone programs of the Cold War, the D-21, known internally as TAG. Later, in Indonesian retellings, the name Papanama the 21 surfaced, a literal and slightly comical translation of tagboard, but one that captures the project's unusual aura. Despite its humble-sounding nickname, the D-21 was anything but ordinary. It was a Mach 3 drone born from the same family of high-altitude technology that produced the A-12, the D-21, was conceived in the early 1960s, at a time when manned reconnaissance missions had become increasingly risky. With the U-2 shootdown incident still fresh in strategic memory, the United States sought alternatives capable of reaching deep into hostile airspace without risking a pilot's capture. Clarence Kelly Johnson, already responsible for the A-12's revolutionary design, proposed a drone that could travel as fast as the Blackbird family, fly at stratospheric altitudes, and carry a payload of high-resolution film cameras. This drone would be launched from an aircraft, sprint across hostile territory at speeds exceeding Mach 3, then jettison its camera capsule, which would parachute into the ocean for recovery. The drone itself would self-destruct in added measure to protect classified technology. Area 51 once again became the testing ground for this bold experiment. Engineers and pilots working on the project operated under intense secrecy. Test flights often took place at dawn or dusk to minimize visual detection, and the drone itself was housed in specialized shelters to conceal it from aerial observation. Despite its sleek, futuristic look, its long, narrow fuselage and sharply swept wings, the D-21 was notoriously difficult to handle. It pushed engines, materials, and aerodynamic design to limits that were barely understood. Many engineers viewed the drone as a technical marvel. Others saw it as a barely controllable missile pretending to be an aircraft. Initial flight tests revealed just how temperamental the D-21 could be. Its ramjet engine, a cutting-edge propulsion system that operated efficiently only at extreme speeds, required the drone to be launched from a mothership rather than taking off under its own power. Early tests used a modified A-12 variant known as the M21, configured with a dorsal pylon to carry the drone. The launch procedure was perilous. The mothership had to reach near Blackbird speeds, align perfectly, and release the drone in a precise maneuver that left no room for error. A slight misalignment or aerodynamic disturbance could spell disaster. And disaster did come. In 1966, during a test launch over the Pacific, a D-21 malfunctioned immediately after separation. Instead of flying cleanly away, it veered back and struck the M21. The collision tore both aircraft apart. The two crew members, pilot Bill Park and launch control officer Ray Torek, ejected into the ocean. Park survived, but Torek tragically drowned. The incident shook the program and marked the end of the M21 as a launch platform. Afterward, Skunkworks reconfigured the launch system, opting to use a B-52 bomber instead. This approach reduced the risks to flight crews, though it also introduced new complexities. The drone now required a rocket booster to reach the speeds needed to ignite its ramjet engine. While safer for pilots, this procedure increased the number of failure points during launch. Still, the program continued, driven by intelligence demands and Cold War urgency. During subsequent tests at Area 51 and other locations, the D-21 delivered mixed results. Some flights performed flawlessly, streaking across the sky in near-silent blurs, accelerating to speeds few machines had ever achieved. Others ended in mechanical failure, mid-air breakdowns, or failed recoveries. In a handful of operational missions conducted over China, the drones flew their intended routes but encountered difficulties during recovery. Capsules were lost. Some drones disappeared entirely. One even ended up intact in the Soviet Union after a malfunction, a recovery that deeply alarmed American intelligence agencies. By 1971, the limitations of the D-21 program had become undeniable. Although the drone represented incredible innovation, it was also unreliable, expensive, and politically risky. With satellite reconnaissance advancing rapidly and providing consistent, safe intelligence without entry into foreign airspace, the drone's strategic value diminished. The program was quietly canceled, and the surviving drones were placed in storage, left as relics of an era when aviation was pushed to its absolute extremes. Yet, despite its short operational lifespan, the D-21's legacy is profound. It proved that unmanned platforms could achieve speeds and performance equal to, if not surpassing, manned aircraft. It demonstrated new materials, propulsion systems, and guidance mechanisms that would influence future aerospace design, and it provided invaluable insights into the challenges of remote reconnaissance. Long before the world would see drones routinely patrolling battlefields and global hotspots, modern UAVs, whether used for surveillance, targeting, or intelligence gathering, owe part of their existence to the lessons learned from the D-21. Although the drone was decades ahead of its time, its failures were just as instructive as its successes. Engineers learned how to manage extreme temperatures, develop stable flight controls for unmanned craft, and create autonomous systems capable of adjusting to complex environments. Many principles tested in the D-21 have been revived in contemporary hypersonic research and next-generation intelligence platforms currently in development. In the quiet halls of Area 51, the memory of the D-21 remains an integral chapter of the facility's evolution. It symbolizes the willingness to test boundaries, to risk ambitious ideas, and to explore aviation domains where no pilot could safely go. Though sometimes misunderstood, even humorously mislabeled, The D-21 was a bold stride toward the technological future, and in the vast Nevada desert, where secrecy defines innovation, this experimental drone paved the way for an era in which unmanned flight would become one of the most important tools in modern warfare and intelligence gathering. Throughout the Cold War and well into the modern era, Area 51 has been repeatedly linked to one of the most guarded aspects of American intelligence operations: the examination, disassembly, and testing of foreign military technologies. While the U.S. government has never fully acknowledged the extent of these activities, a combination of declassified documents, testimonies, and historical patterns has helped paint a partial but compelling picture. Within these shadows lies the field of foreign technology evaluation, a domain designed to understand, exploit, and counter the technological capabilities of adversaries. Area 51, with its unparalleled secrecy, would become a natural hub for such activities. The origins of foreign technology evaluation reach back to the early stages of the Cold War, a period when the United States and the Soviet Union were racing not only to develop advanced military platforms but also to understand each other's breakthroughs. Captured equipment, downed aircraft, radar systems, and missile components became invaluable sources of intelligence. The U.S. needed a remote site with controlled airspace and compartmentalized access to analyze these technologies without detection. Groom Lake fit that description perfectly. Although official documentation remains sparse, declassified materials from the 1990s and early 2000s provide glimpses into such activities. One notable program, often referenced indirectly, involved the acquisition and testing of Soviet aircraft, most famously the MiG series. These aircraft, obtained through clandestine deals or defectors, were reportedly evaluated at sites like Groom Lake to assess their performance, weaknesses, and potential vulnerabilities. Pilots trained to fly them, engineers measured their capabilities, and tactical analysts studied how best to counter them in combat. These evaluations were part of broader efforts known informally as half donut, half drill, and half ferry, which focused respectively on understanding the MiG-21, MiG-17, and other foreign platforms. Although the Air Force eventually acknowledged aspects of these programs, it never explicitly confirmed that Area 51 served as the central testing ground, yet geographic clues, flight patterns, and historical context strongly point to it. Area 51's isolation, sheltered runways, and deep classification structure made it the ideal environment for operations that could not risk exposure. Any sighting of a Soviet aircraft above the Nevada desert would have been easily dismissed as another UFO sighting, a public misconception that ironically aided the secrecy of these efforts. Beyond aircraft, intelligence agencies likely examined radar systems, missile guidance equipment, and electronic warfare tools within Area 51's secure perimeter. Reports from former workers, typically vague and carefully worded to avoid violating security agreements, hint at hangars dedicated to reverse engineering. These individuals describe the painstaking dismantling of foreign technologies to uncover engineering principles, identify vulnerabilities, and replicate or counteract specific features. In an era defined by espionage and mistrust, even the smallest details, such as the materials used in a radar, DISH, or the circuit design of a missile seeker, could shift the balance of military advantage. Much of this work fell under the classification level known as TSSC, top secret, sensitive compartmented information. TSSCI is not merely a label. It is a system of nested secrecy in which information is divided into compartments, accessible only to those with a verified need to know. Someone with top secret clearance might still be denied access to TSSCI materials unless they belong to the correct compartment. In the context of Area 51, this meant that even personnel with high-level clearance often knew only fragments of the operations taking place. Workers might collaborate on a specific component or system, yet remain unaware of its ultimate purpose or the broader program of which it was a part. This compartmentalization created an environment in which speculation flourished both inside and outside the base. Workers spoke of mystery hangars, unidentified aircraft shapes, and late-night transports under heavy guard. To avoid violating their security oaths, they often used coded language or euphemisms. To the public, these whispers reinforced the mythic aura surrounding Area 51. But to the intelligence community, such measures were essential safeguards. Any leakage of information, however small, could compromise a program, reveal its capabilities, or signal strategic intentions. The implications of TSSCI secrecy extend far beyond Area 51's perimeter, because these programs remain classified for decades, sometimes indefinitely. The public often learns about them only long after they have shaped global events. Without access to the full record, historians, journalists, and citizens can only piece together an incomplete narrative. This gap fuels speculation, conspiracy theories, and misunderstandings. The veil of secrecy becomes fertile ground for mythmaking, phenomenon seen clearly in the enduring fascination surrounding UFOs and alleged extraterrestrial artifacts. In reality, many unexplained sightings correlated suspiciously with the testing schedules of foreign aircraft housed at Area 51. Moreover, the secrecy has consequences for scientific and technological understanding. Innovations born from foreign technology evaluation materials, research, propulsion insights, radar absorption techniques often remain hidden from academic and commercial circles for years. While some breakthroughs eventually transition into civilian applications, many remain locked behind secure doors, depriving broader society of potential advances. This tension between national security and public benefit is an ongoing challenge in the world of classified research. Yet there is another side to the secrecy: its strategic importance. By studying foreign technologies in complete concealment, the United States has been able to develop countermeasures, refine aircraft designs, and prepare for adversaries' evolving capabilities. The lessons learned from Soviet hardware, for instance, undoubtedly contributed to improvements in American fighter jets, missile defense systems, and electronic warfare strategies. Without such analysis, the nation's ability to anticipate threats would be significantly diminished. Ultimately, the foreign technology evaluations suspected to have taken place at Area 51 are emblematic of the facility's larger purpose: to operate on the cutting edge of military innovation while remaining shrouded in silence. The combination of declassified fragments, insider accounts, and strategic logic reveals a mosaic of operations that remain mostly hidden. Within the isolated expanse of Groom Lake, engineers and analysts reverse-engineered the tools of America's adversaries, often rewriting the rules of modern warfare in the process. In the end, the truth about what foreign technologies passed through Area 51 may remain partial or permanently obscured, but the legacy of these clandestine studies endures. Embedded in the aircraft that dominate modern skies and the defense systems that protect nations. In the secrecy of the Nevada desert, the hidden histories of technological confrontation were written silent stories that reshaped the course of global military power. By the mid-1970s, a new dimension of warfare had emerged, one no longer defined solely by speed, altitude, or firepower, but by invisibility. Radar systems around the world had grown increasingly sophisticated, capable of detecting aircraft at long distances, tracking them with accuracy, and guiding missiles toward them with lethal precision. The United States, observing the rapid evolution of Soviet air defenses, recognized that traditional advantages were shrinking. To survive in this new environment, military aviation needed a revolutionary breakthrough. That breakthrough began with a secretive and unconventional project known as Have Blue, a program that would ultimately give birth to the world's first operational stealth aircraft. The F-117 Nighthawk Have Blue emerged not from government directives but from a quiet realization at Lockheed Skunk Works that shaping an aircraft to deflect radar waves, rather than simply absorbing or masking them, could render it nearly invisible to detection systems. Central to this idea was a mathematical theory proposed by a Soviet scientist, Pyotr Uvtimtsev, whose research on radar wave scattering had been overlooked by his own government. American analysts recognized its potential, and Skunkworks engineers saw an opportunity to turn the abstruse equations into a practical stealth design. Kelly Johnson, the legendary architect of the U-2 and A-12 programs, had already stepped back from day-to-day development, but his successor, Ben Rich, championed the idea with quiet determination. Area 51, already steeped in the legacy of Oxcart and experimental aviation, was selected as the birthplace of the new technology. No other facility combined the necessary secrecy, remote environment, and infrastructure required to test a radically unconventional aircraft. The desert valley around Groom Lake would soon become home to odd angular shapes, bizarre prototypes, and nighttime test flights that would eventually reshape the future of aerial warfare. The Have Blue prototype was unlike anything Skunkworks had ever built. Its appearance defied traditional aerodynamics, a faceted diamond of sharp edges, flat panels, and seemingly disjointed angles. Its shape was determined not by airflow, but by the mathematical need to scatter radar signals away from enemy receivers. Engineers joked that the aircraft looked more like a broken mirror or a piece of origami than a plane. Aerodynamically, it should not have flown at Albert through advanced fly-by-wire systems. It did. Fly-by-wire systems. It did. Construction of the prototypes designated HB-1001 and HB-1002B began in intense secrecy. Even within the Pentagon, only a small, compartmentalized group knew the full scope of the project. Area 51 personnel were informed only on a need-to-know basis, and the stealth research hangar was isolated from other operations. Test pilots selected for the program underwent additional clearances and training, sworn to secrecy that extended even into their personal lives. Flights were conducted exclusively at night, when darkness concealed the aircraft's peculiar silhouette from prying cameras or satellite overpasses. The first Have Blue test flight occurred in 1977. Observers described it as surreal. The angular craft, lifting into the sky with surprising stability, its radar signature so low that tracking equipment sometimes lost it entirely. Yet, Hablu was far from perfect. Its unusual shape created unpredictable aerodynamic behavior, and several test flights ended abruptly due to system failures. Both prototypes eventually crashed, one due to a hydraulic malfunction, the other because of an engine fire. In both incidents, the pilots survived, but the aircraft were destroyed beyond recovery. Despite the losses, the program was deemed a success. The data gathered from the prototypes confirmed the viability of stealth geometry and proved that radar invisibility was not only achievable but repeatable. Armed with these insights, the Pentagon authorized a full-scale stealth strike aircraft under a new codename, Senior Trend. The operational version would shed some of Hablu's most extreme design elements in favor of improved handling, payload capacity, and mission reliability. The result was the now iconic F-117 Nighthawk, a jet that retained the faceted stealth panels of its predecessor but featured a more robust frame, and systems optimized for combat missions. Area 51 played a central role in this transformation. It became, quite literally, the world's first stealth laboratory. New hangars rose from the desert, specially coated to reduce thermal and radar signatures. Runway lighting was modified for covert nighttime use, and flight schedules were arranged around satellite orbits so Soviet reconnaissance could not capture images of the aircraft. Engineers, pilots, and maintenance crews lived double life, spending long stretches at Groom Lake, then returning home unable to discuss anything about their work. Training for the F-117 began in utmost secrecy. The aircraft flew only at night for the first several years, its unique silhouette hidden under darkness as pilots learned to maneuver its unconventional shape. Those who saw mysterious black triangles soaring over the Nevada desert reported them as UFOs, ironically helping mask the program's existence. The government, as usual, offered no explanation. By 1983, the first production F-117s were delivered, and the aircraft reached initial operational capability. Even then, the program remained classified. The public would not learn of its existence until 1988, and even then, only partial details were released. But the aircraft's true debut came during the Gulf War in 1991, when F-117s flew some of the first strikes of the conflict, slipping past Iraqi radar systems and hitting high-value targets with astonishing precision. The world witnessed what had been nurtured in secret at Area 51, a plane that could enter heavily defended airspace with near impunity. The legacy of Hablu extends far beyond the F-117 itself. It established Area 51 as the global epicenter of stealth research, a facility where radar signatures were studied as intensely as aerodynamics, and where nighttime skies concealed vehicles decades ahead of public recognition. The success of the program paved the way for the B-2 Spirit bomber, the F-22 Raptor, and the F-35 Lightning II aircraft that dominate modern air power. In the quiet sands of Groom Lake, the world's first stealth aircraft was born. What began as a mathematical curiosity and a strange angular prototype became one of the most transformative advances in aviation history. Area 51, once the home of speed and altitude, evolved into a sanctuary for invisibility. Its desert runways, hosting shapes that reshaped warfare while remaining hidden from the world. As the F-117 Nighthawk stepped from the shadows into operational reality in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Area 51 entered a new era, one defined not only by secrecy, but by anticipation. The facility had already proven its unparalleled value as a testing ground for technologies that could alter the balance of global power. Now, as the Cold War drew to a close, the world assumed that the pace of black-budget projects would slow. But within the locked perimeter of Groom Lake, the opposite happened. Innovation accelerated, threats evolved, and the need for aircraft that could dominate the skies of a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape became more urgent than ever. The end of the Cold War did not bring the end of clandestine aviation development. Instead, it reshaped the priorities of the intelligence and defense communities. The Soviet Union had fragmented, but emerging powers, unpredictable regimes, and technological rivals posed fresh challenges. Stealth, speed, and electronic warfare remained critical. Satellites continued to advance, but they had limitations: predictable orbits, vulnerability to weather, and growing susceptibility to anti-satellite weapons. The United States still needed platforms that could gather intelligence and strike targets at a moment's notice, without warning and without detection. That was in this atmosphere that rumors began to swirl about a new aircraft, one that exceeded even the remarkable capabilities of the A-12 and SR-71. Nicknamed Aurora, the alleged platform was said to be a hypersonic reconnaissance aircraft capable of speeds above Mach 5. Reports from the late 1980s through the early 2000s described powerful sonic booms over California and Nevada, triangular contrails shaped like the shockwaves of an exotic propulsion system, and radar signatures that briefly appeared before vanishing at impossible speeds. Aviation enthusiasts pointed to budget line items, referencing black reconnaissance projects and expenditures associated with high-speed testing, speculating that Aurora was real, and that Area 51 was its home. Whether Aurora ever truly existed remains debated. No official documentation has confirmed its development, and many analysts believe that what people observed were either experimental engines, classified drones, or misinterpreted natural phenomena. Yet the persistence of the rumor speaks to a deeper truth. Area 51 did not stop testing advanced aircraft after the F-117. It simply shifted into programs, so classified that even their names remain unknown. One area where evidence is stronger concerns the development of hypersonic propulsion systems, including scramjet supersonic combustion ramjet engines. These engines promise unprecedented speed, enabling aircraft or drones to travel at Mach 6 or higher. Such vehicles could penetrate denied airspace faster than any missile defense system could react. While only fragmentary information is available, scattered reports from defense analysts, satellite images showing unusual runway scorch patterns, and the construction of new specialized facilities at Groom Lake suggest that hypersonic testing has indeed occurred there. Beyond hypersonics, Area 51 has likely played a major role in the evolution of unmanned aerial vehicles (UAV). After the cancelled D-21 program, drone technology lay dormant for decades before re-emerging with explosive potential in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The Predator and Global Hawk, though tested primarily at other ranges, were part of the broader wave of unmanned experimentation. Classified UAVs, designed for stealth reconnaissance, electronic attack, and long-range penetration missions, almost certainly underwent early flight trials at Groom Lake. Rumors have circulated about high-altitude stealth drones, including the RQ-170 Sentinel, whose existence was confirmed only after one crashed in Iran in 2011. Observers speculated that Area 51 served as the proving ground for prototypes of increasingly autonomous systems with razor-thin radar profiles. The role of Area 51 only expanded as warfare evolved into the digital age. In the post-Cold War world, threats became more asymmetric. Terrorist networks, hostile non-state groups, cyber warfare tacticians, and technologically ambitious nations demanded new tools platforms that could gather intelligence in real time, survive in contested airspace, and operate without risking human lives. Electronic warfare systems, radar-evading coatings, and modular drone architectures all required extensive testing under tightly controlled conditions. Groom Lake, with its closed airspace and electromagnetic isolation, provided the perfect environment. In addition, Area 51 has adapted to support advancements in sensor technology, including synthetic aperture radar, multispectral imaging, and low probability of intercept communication systems. These innovations are not as glamorous as Mach 3 aircraft, but they are crucial to modern intelligence operations. The ability to see through clouds, track vehicles under camouflage nets, or intercept encrypted signals in hostile territory can change the course of military planning. Every major update to these systems requires calibration flights, signature testing, and integration trials tasks that almost certainly bring aircraft to the skies above the Groom range. As new global threats emerged, Area 51 also became involved in shaping technologies aimed at countering anti-access area denial (A2AD) strategies, developed by nations seeking to prevent U.S. aircraft from entering sensitive airspace. This included testing low observable drones, electronic jamming systems, and potentially directed energy platforms. Whether these are laser-based, microwave-based, or entirely new forms of energy projection remains unknown, but their testing would require exactly the sort of secrecy Area 51 excels at providing. The facility's ability to adapt has ensured its continued relevance into the 21st century. The rise of China's advanced air defense networks, Russia's return to military assertiveness, and the proliferation of drone warfare across the globe have all underscored the need for cutting-edge research. Groom Lake has remained a symbol of American innovation and American secrecy through each era. New hangars have appeared on satellite imagery, runways have been resurfaced, and support infrastructure has expanded, even as the U.S. government maintains near silence about what transpires within its perimeter. In the end, Area 51's true significance lies not only in its past accomplishments but in its enduring purpose. It is a crucible where the boundaries of aviation and warfare are tested, where the next generation of covert technologies is shaped long before the public ever learns of them. From alleged hypersonic aircraft to stealth drones unseen by civilian eyes, Area 51 remains at the forefront of military innovation, a silent guardian of American strategic advantage. And as global threats continue to evolve, one fact remains certain: the desert runway at Groom Lake will continue to host aircraft and systems that defy imagination, operating far beyond the limits of what the world believes possible. For decades, Area 51 has existed at the intersection of secrecy, speculation, and the American public's fascination with the unknown. The U.S. government's deliberate silence combined with the facility's enigmatic presence in the middle of the Nevada desert has turned Groom Lake into a cultural phenomenon. Yet behind the myth lies a very real political and bureaucratic tension over transparency, national security, and the public's right to know. From Freedom of Information Act, FOIA battles, to televised congressional hearings, the story of Area 51 is as much about government secrecy as it is about aircraft and technology. For much of its history, the U.S. government refused to acknowledge that Area 51 existed at all. Maps omitted it, documents redacted its name, and officials sidestepped any mention of operations near Groom Lake. It was not until 2013, after an 8-year FOIA request by a researcher, that the Central Intelligence Agency finally declassified the first official documents acknowledging the facility's existence. These documents describe the U-2A-12 and early reconnaissance programs, yet still contained extensive redactions fueling suspicion that much remained buried behind the ink. Why such secrecy? The government argued that acknowledging operations at the facility could expose sensitive technologies crucial to national security. For decades, enemies and rivals sought clues about US capabilities: stealth, reconnaissance, propulsion, and electronic warfare. The government's stance was clear: silence was necessary. But this silence also created a vacuum, and the public filled it with imagination. FOIA requests have long been the primary tool by which journalists, historians, and curious citizens attempt to peel back the layers of secrecy. Yet even successful FOIA releases are often incomplete, riddled with blacked-out pages or sections withheld under national security exemptions. These limitations have sparked frustration and mistrust. Advocacy groups argue that excessive secrecy violates democratic accountability. Intelligence agencies counter that revealing details even decades later could compromise ongoing technologies or reveal operational methods still in use. In the 1990s, the tension escalated when employees and contractors sued the Air Force, claiming exposure to toxic materials burned in open pits at Groom Lake. The government invoked the state secrets privilege, arguing that even discussing the substances used on site would jeopardize national security. The case was ultimately dismissed not because the accusations lacked merit, but because the government claimed that revealing any details about Area 51's operations would be too dangerous. Critics saw this as evidence of secrecy taken too far. Supporters argued that such measures protected critical capabilities. This persistent silence has had an unexpected side effect. It has tightly intertwined Area 51 with the mythology of UFOs and extraterrestrial visitation. Throughout the Cold War, unusual shapes in the sky reconnaissance aircraft, stealth prototypes, or high-altitude test flights were frequently mistaken for alien spacecraft. The extreme secrecy around these projects made it impossible for officials to correct misconceptions, and so the stories grew. The CIA itself later admitted that a significant percentage of UFO sightings during the 1950s and 1960s were actually observations of the U-2 and A-12 aircraft flying at altitudes far above anything then known to the public. Commercial pilots, accustomed to cruising at 30,000 feet, were stunned to see glinting metal shapes soaring at 60,000 or 70,000 feet. Lacking any frame of reference, they labeled these objects unidentified. But because the aircraft were classified, the Air Force could not disclose the truth even to pilots within its own ranks. Over time, these sightings merged with folklore. Rachel, Navidette, the closest town to Area 51, capitalized on the phenomenon, catering to tourists, UFO enthusiasts, and thrill-seekers driving the extraterrestrial highway. The culture took on a life of its own. Documentaries, books, and talk shows discussed secret alien autopsies, reverse-engineered spacecraft, and government cover-ups. While none of these claims have been substantiated, the government's silence provided fertile ground for theories to flourish. Hollywood played an equally powerful role in shaping the myth. Blockbuster films, from Independence Day to Paul, portrayed Area 51 as a vault of cosmic secrets. Video games like Half-Life and GTA V referenced it, and conspiracy-themed TV shows from The X-Files to modern cable documentaries add layers of drama and intrigue. By the early 2000s, the base had transformed from a real military installation into a symbol of classified knowledge and government deception. Even those who doubted extraterrestrial involvement recognized Area 51 as a cultural icon of secrecy. In recent years, renewed public interest in UFOs, now rebranded as UAP or unidentified aerial phenomena, has placed Area 51 back in the spotlight. Congressional hearings, Navy pilot testimonies, and Pentagon task forces have brought legitimacy to the topic in ways previously unthinkable. Yet, despite the surge of transparency efforts, Area 51 remains noticeably absent from official UAP discussions. Its operations are still shielded behind layers of classification, and government representatives avoid addressing it directly. This avoidance reinforces A paradox. The more open the government becomes about other military technologies or UAP investigations, the more Area 51 retains its mystique. Groom Lake has become a symbol of secrets that may never be revealed. A reminder that even in an age of mass communication and satellite imagery, some mysteries remain protected behind razor wire and restricted airspace. At its core, the controversy surrounding Area 51 reflects a deeper societal struggle. How much secrecy is acceptable in the name of national security? How much transparency is owed to a democratic society? Area 51 sits at the heart of this tension and emblem of both legitimate defense requirements and the public's distrust of hidden power. In truth, the mysteries of Area 51 are far more terrestrial than the legends suggest. Its legacy is not one of alien spacecraft, but of pioneering aircraft, groundbreaking technologies, and intelligence efforts that shape the modern world. Yet the myth will always remain, because in a land defined by silence, the imagination thrives in the desert, keeps its secrets well. Even as Area 51 has achieved legendary status for its role in aviation, innovation, and secretive military projects, the facility has also been the subject of controversy on a far more tangible, earthly level. Environmental concerns. Hidden deep within Nevada's desert, Area 51 sits in an ecologically fragile region, surrounded by arid ecosystems and sparsely populated communities. Over decades of operations, from testing high-speed jets to experimenting with exotic propulsion systems, handling of hazardous materials has become a significant point of contention between the U.S. government and local stakeholders. Evidence of environmental issues at Area 51 surfaced gradually, largely through whistleblowers, former employees, and investigative journalists. Reports indicated that chemical solvents, jet fuel residues, and experimental propellants were sometimes disposed of in ways that might now be considered improper or unsafe. Early records describe open burn pits, uncontrolled storage of toxic substances, and limited oversight in waste management. At the time, regulations were less stringent, and secrecy took precedence over environmental accountability. Yet decades later, these practices sparked lawsuits and federal inquiries. One of the earliest and most notable cases involved former workers who alleged exposure to hazardous chemicals while performing maintenance and testing duties. Some reported chronic respiratory problems, skin conditions, and other long-term health effects, claiming that protective measures were insufficient or inconsistently enforced. Legal action against the Air Force and related contractors brought national attention to the environmental footprint of classified facilities. However, litigation was often complicated by the classified nature of Area 51 operations. Plaintiffs faced obstacles in presenting evidence, since photographs, technical records, and even medical assessments could be restricted due to TSSCI classification. Courts struggled to balance claims of environmental harm with national security concerns, often ruling in favor of the government on procedural or confidentiality grounds. In addition to worker lawsuits, advocacy groups and environmental agencies expressed concern about the broader ecological impact of Area 51. The Nevada desert is home to delicate flora and fauna, including endemic species adapted to extreme conditions. Accidental contamination of soil, water, or air could have long-term consequences, especially in areas near test ranges or disposal sites. Some analyses suggest that local groundwater may have been affected by runoff from testing areas. Though the lack of publicly accessible data makes definitive conclusions challenging, the federal government has maintained that operations have been conducted with careful monitoring and compliance with contemporary environmental standards. But skepticism persists among environmentalists and neighboring communities. These legal and environmental conflicts reveal an important tension inherent to Area 51, the coexistence of extreme secrecy and the requirement for public accountability. While it is virtually impossible for citizens to observe operations within the base, the consequences of those operations, chemical exposure, ecological disturbance, or other unintended effects extend beyond its fence lines. As such, the facility occupies a peculiar position, simultaneously shielded from scrutiny and yet implicated in matters of public interest. This duality mirrors the broader mystique of Area 51 itself, an institution both indispensable and controversial, both revered and questioned. Looking toward the future, the relevance of Area 51 continues to evolve. Some analysts argue that the base's traditional role-testing experimental aircraft, stealth technologies, and reconnaissance platforms has diminished with the advent of satellite intelligence, advanced unmanned aerial systems, and globally distributed research facilities. From this perspective, Area 51 could be considered a relic of a bygone era, a site where Cold War-era secrecy once demanded isolation, but where technological advances now allow innovation to occur across more dispersed and less conspicuous locations. Yet others contend that Area 51 remains as vital as ever, albeit in ways invisible to the public eye. Emerging threats from hypersonic missiles and advanced drone swarms to electronic warfare and anti-satellite weapons require testing and development. under conditions that still favor isolation and secrecy. The desert provides not only space for experimentation but also electromagnetic shielding, controlled airspace, and minimal risk of unintentional observation. In an era of near-constant satellite surveillance and cyber exposure, the value of a facility that can operate beyond both physical and digital observation cannot be overstated. In this light, Area 51 may not be fading from relevance. It may be quietly consolidating its role as a hub for next-generation military research and innovation. The narrative of Area 51 IT secrecy, its controversies, and its innovations culminates in a reflection on human imagination and ambition. The facility represents a nexus of multiple histories: the development of high-speed and stealth aircraft, the clandestine evaluation of foreign technologies, and the global fascination with the unknown. Its legend has shaped popular culture, inspired science fiction, and fostered generations of curiosity about what lies beyond the visible sky. From the U-2 and SR-71 to the F-117 and experimental drones, Area 51 has been a laboratory of extremes, pushing the limits of engineering while operating in profound secrecy. Moreover, Area 51 embodies the complexity of modern governance, where security imperatives, technological innovation, public curiosity, and environmental responsibility intersect. It is a place where human ingenuity confronts the unknown, where risks are measured both in lives and in information, and where the very act of concealment fuels myth. Its story is not simply about aircraft or UFOs, but about how societies navigate the boundaries between openness and secrecy, imagination and reality, history and legend. Ultimately, whether Area 51 is increasingly forgotten or quietly intensifying, its strategic importance depends on perspective. To the public, it may appear as a shadow on the map, a place relegated to rumor and pop culture. Yet to the U.S. military, intelligence community, and aerospace engineers, it remains an active, vital, and perhaps irreplaceable site. In both reality and myth, Area 51 continues to occupy a unique position, one that bridges the history of aviation, the cutting edge of military technology, and the human fascination with what lies hidden. In closing, Area 51 stands as a testament to the extremes of innovation and secrecy. Its runways have hosted aircraft that redefined speed, altitude, and radar invisibility. Its hangars have sheltered experiments whose results shape modern defense strategy. Its fences have guarded secrets that have captivated the global imagination. Environmental challenges, lawsuits, and debates over transparency remind us that even the most remote facilities exist within the larger world. And as long as new threats emerge and new technologies demand testing, Area 51 will continue to play a pivotal, if largely invisible, role in the story of human ingenuity, national defense, and the enduring allure of the unknown.